everybody. I've been going through a lot lately. I wanted to open up this conversation to talk about something that's been on my mind a lot recently, and maybe it is for you too. I don't know what you're going through, but something that I've been going through is losing loved ones. I had a friend that passed away this year, and that was the first time for me that a very close friend that I had a lot of memories with we went back 10 plus years, and so losing her was extremely hard. And it's weird how grief will play tricks on your mind. And so I just wanted to open up this conversation because on my page, I like to talk about things that are hard that we all go through in case someone else is going through that, so they know that they're not alone. So I'm going to give you 10 truths about grief. And we'll start with the first one. And as we go, I'll just kind of explain my personal experience. Obviously, I did lose my friend this past year. And I just recently lost a small puppy that I was training to be my service dog. There was some unknown underlying condition. I did everything that the vet told me to do, and it just couldn't save him. He was just too tiny, and they stated something like failure to thrive or having some underlying condition that the vet hadn't been able to discover. I had taken him to the vet the day before he passed away, for about 4 hours trying to determine what was going on. And they did send me home with him with instructions that I followed to a T, but the little guy just couldn't make it. He wasn't, Mother Nature is sometimes brutal. It's sometimes, I was talking with my sister and she was even talking about how a lot of the times, moms of puppies, will neglect or kick out the one that is sickly, the one that they know is not going to make it. So I really blame the person that I got it from for not being open and honest with me about the struggles that it was going through. I don't want to go too much down the rabbit hole, but it was something that was very heartbreaking, very devastating, and I'm still getting over it. And it is extremely hard. I've been crying all day, every day. Anyway, so let's get to these 10 things about grief. So number 1, grief isn't just sadness, it's shock. And I definitely relate to this because when I found out that my friend had passed away, it was immediate. I went into shock. And what that looks like, it feels like confusion, guilt, rumination, panic. The nervous system is trying to understand a world that suddenly changed. So your body is like in a state of shock. Your mind is not even fully processing that they're not there anymore. So that's why a lot of the times your immediate thought is to pick up and call them, or, to try to get in contact with them, even though they won't pick up the phone. There's this strong urge to try to connect to them, to try to make sure, like, how could this be? How could this possibly be that they're not here anymore? You just go into a state of complete shock. And that shock lasted days for me. It lasted weeks. To this day, I still think of her a lot. And one thing that we're going to get into, and the next one here, is that guilt is grief's loudest companion. Now, what that means is that when someone or something dies, the mind looks for a way to regain control. Guilt shows up because it feels more actionable than helplessness. To be able to state, this is my fault, this is the reason why it happened, gives your mind a sense of control, that somehow you had control in the situation, when in fact death can be so random, death can be so shocking, so chaotic, that there is no making sense of it. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the bottle. It's like our brains automatically go to guilt, because we think that if we make ourselves the cause of what happened, that we could have stopped it, that we could have saved it. I went through a lot with this when my friend passed away, because I thought, if I had just picked up her last call, if I had just and I was making strives to try to better myself and my life, and was going through a lot at the time, that I didn't have the capacity to hold space for someone who was going through it themselves. And so my guilt centered around not being there for them, even though the honest truth is that there were so many times where they weren't there for me. So a lot of what happened was me trying to protect myself moving forward. And if I had known in retrospect that she wouldn't have made it, I would have picked up that phone call. And it's so hard to realize that you will never get that opportunity. And it's so hard to realize that just because you could have picked up that call does not mean it would have changed any of the outcome. So it's like these little things that we regret or that we have guilt over could possibly have not changed one thing about the outcome. And that's something that we have to remember. So the third one is that love doesn't end when life does. Grief exists because love doesn't disappear on a timeline. The bond remains active even when that person or being is gone. And so even though I only had my puppy for about 3 days, during that small time, I bonded so much. And I have a disability, so it was already helping my disability, just feeling needed, feeling loved, feeling wanted, knowing that there was something so small dependent on me as a mother, just kicked me into a caregiver role that for dogs in particular, caregiving to dogs and getting that unconditional love back has always brought out the best in me. I mean, it brought out the best in me when I got my first dog as a puppy, and just being her mom and taking care of her, and she's healthy and beautiful today. And it's like, I really thrived, being able to take care of something that needed me. And having that baby that I always wanted, I'm child free by choice, but a lot of that choice was taken from me because of my health conditions. So it is a choice, but it's also a forced choice because I really truly don't have another option. And so for me, having a baby puppy was like having a baby, and it was giving me that sensation of being a mother without having the responsibility of raising a tiny human to adulthood. Dogs, they give unconditional love in different ways. They're, very intelligent, and especially with small dogs, they stay baby-like for forever, And so there's something very sweet about that I have found myself really loving being a dog mom versus, having kids of my own. So that love exists no matter if they're gone. You know, I still think about all the memories I have with my friend that passed away and all the good times that we had together. And that love and that bond and that connection, that doesn't go away. You know, it's still there. It's still prevalent. It's still, I can feel the bond that all those memories mattered, all that love mattered, you know, even though they're not here, that love still exists. Number 4 kind of goes into what we were talking about, but short relationships can create deep grief. Length of time doesn't determine depth of attachment. Intensity, vulnerability, and meaning do. So even though I had this small puppy for just a few days, that short time had nothing to do with the bond that I was developing so closely with this little tiny baby. And I can't even put pictures up of him because it's too painful and I just don't want to revisit it. But you know, love can grow. I always thought this was true, but the value of the connection is not how long it's been. It's how deep it goes, you know? And even though, you know, with my friend, we had been friends for 10 plus years. So it's like, you know, we had a long friendship, you know, with the puppy, you know, and, you know, a lot of the other people in my life that, you know, have passed away might not have had such a long, extensive relationship with them. But bonding and connecting with individuals, and having a sense of meaning with those connections, sometimes that matters more in grief and when you're grieving than just how long you knew that person or how long the relationship was. So that goes into it too. You know, love doesn't have a timeline, you know, and there's bonds that are created over passions, over little moments that those moments, you know, it's like life is all about the small moments, you know, and those moments we create with people, we bond with people. So when they pass away, you know, all those little moments stay with us. And it's like, you know, that once again, that love still exists, even if that person is gone. The number 5, grief makes us rewrite the past. After loss, we replay moments and insert knowledge we didn't have at the time. This isn't wisdom, it's pain looking for relief. Well, what if I had just? Well, what if I did? Well, what if? It doesn't matter. Just if all those what ifs had come true, you still might have had the same outcome. Those what ifs, they only hurt you. They don't help you. You know, we think we can rewrite the past, make that last phone call, do that last thing, that whatever pops in your mind after the death, you know, of like, well, I should have done this or I should have done that. I should have been more aware. I should have been more knowledgeable. I should have known this. Sometimes hindsight is 20/20 and there's literally nothing you can do about it. You know, just because you know something now doesn't mean you knew anything then. You know, the hardest part of accepting my friend's death was realizing that if I had known she was going to die, I would have treated our connection differently. But that doesn't change the outcome of her death. And so it only hurts me to try to rewrite the past when I actually cannot rewrite the past. It's completely out of my control, completely. Number 6, grief isn't linear or polite. It comes in waves. You can feel okay one moment and destroyed the next. That doesn't mean you're regressing. throughout the past, couple days, I've gone through waves of just tears and crying and, loss and, just sadness, and when my friend passed away, it took me months. It took me months to get to a place where I could say her name and not start crying. To this day, I still will say her name and start tearing up and start crying, because that's how much remembering her hits that grief, that wound, that sadness, that she's no longer here, that I'll never be able to call her and say, girl, you remember that one time? That I'll never be able to hold my puppy and smell the top of his head and just give him little kisses on the mouth, on the nose. I'll never be able to do that again. That's those moments, they don't just hurt when it happens, they hurt for a long time after it happens. Anytime you bring it up, it can bring up those emotions. So don't judge yourself for how you grieve. Grieving is a wave, it comes in waves, and sometimes it hits you like a brick, and other times it's just a dull ache, a void, a feeling that there's loss and there's a piece of you that's missing. Being the kind of person who grieves deeply is not a flaw. Sensitivity, empathy, attachment increase pain, and they're also what make life rich and purposeful and meaningful. I am definitely the kind of person that feels everything so heavily. And so grieving for me, I felt like I was going into the depths of hell, and I had a very weird intuition dream before my friend passed away. I had a dream that I know was about her. And it's like, even after my puppy died, I suddenly just smelled him, like his scent. I had cleaned everything up. I was, had washed my hands multiple times. I was, running around the house doing stuff. And all of a sudden I just smelled him. I just smelled his scent. And I just know that that was him and his bond and his spirit. I'm going to cry. I just know that that was his bond and his spirit looking over me and just giving me a little taste of his love. Even with my friend passing away, we had gotten into a little argument. We had gotten into a disagreement. And instead of me communicating how I felt, I was kind of just over it and I wanted to move on. And when I found out that she had passed away, it just hit me like a weight, just like a ton of bricks. Like, it just hit me where I was like, oh my God, like, just because you have an argument with someone or just because you have a little tiff with someone does not mean you wish them death, does not mean that you want them to die. I wanted her to live a long life. I always imagined her living a long life. I couldn't even imagine her getting, being younger than me and passing away younger than me. It's a very tragic thing when a young person passes away from not natural causes. That's a very tragic thing. And the fact that I felt that so deeply, even though we had been kind of at odds in the moment, and maybe that made it feel even more deeper. I'm not sure. But I just know that if you are someone who grieves deeply and who feels deeply, that is not a flaw. I remember being a little kid and one of my classmates' parents had passed away in an airplane, and everyone was crying. And I'm such an empath that even though I didn't know the kid very well, I knew him a little bit, but even though I didn't know him very well, the grief hit me and I was crying along with everybody else because I was feeling everybody else's emotions. So grief can be funny like that, you know, it can sneak up on you. It can be something that, you know, you feel deeply just because you feel all of your emotions deeply. So grief is no exception to that. This one is hopeful. Grief can awaken purpose and identity. Loss often reveals who we are when we love, care, and show up, even when the outcome hurts. There's things that I definitely learned about myself through grieving. And most of that is the fact that I cannot control the outcome. You know, I am not in control. The universe is in control, you know, and I have to put faith and trust into my ancestors, into my spirit guides, that they are always protecting and guiding me. And there's something that we just wish we could make sense of, these things that are almost act of gods, you know, Mother Earth, you know, hurricanes, tornadoes, you know, brutality, you know, animals killing each other for food, you know, it's like there's these real forces that are just pure Mother Nature, that are savage in nature. And that's the force, the life force. It comes with both positive and negative. And a lot of the time we go through trial by fire, where we discover the most important parts of ourselves, the most lost parts of ourselves, we rediscover and reclaim through the fire of life. You know, the fire is what burns everything down that you don't need. And out of that fire, we become better people. We become more aware, more in tune. We become more light, and we are able to help more people when we walk through that fire and come out better on the other side. Number 9, healing does not mean forgetting. Healing means carrying the memory without self-punishment. The goal isn't to erase grief, but to make room for life alongside of it. You know, healing does not mean forgetting. So it's like, even with my friend and my puppy and all the people in the last 10 years of my life, there's been a whole handful of people who've passed away. You know, just a lot surrounding my music, surrounding, you know, my friends and family, you know, a lot of death, you know, a lot of people that we lost along the way, you know, and healing doesn't mean forgetting about those people. I think about these people all the time. I think about my friend all the time. I think about the people I've lost all the time. This most recent loss of my puppy just reopened all those wounds from all the people that we've lost along the way, you know, and we still have those memories. We still cherish those memories. And I still talk about my friend who passed away and the memories that we shared together. And I think that keeps her spirit alive, you know. Healing doesn't mean we just forget about somebody. It just means that we allow grief to happen, but we also allow life to happen. Grief is not the end of life. Death in my culture, in Native American culture, is another part of life. It's seen as not separate from life. It's hand in hand. So it's like we have to understand that, along with life comes pain. Along with love comes pain. Along with life and love come death and pain. And that's the two sides of the coin, And so when we heal enough, like with my friend passing away, that I can bring her name up without tearing up. Not all the time, but there's times where I can say a funny story that we had together without completely breaking down and crying because she's not here with me. And this is the last one. Grief asks for witnessing, not fixing. There is nothing to solve. What helps most is being seen, held, and allowed to grieve without being rushed. So there's this thing, especially immediately when death happens, where you immediately go into problem solve. How do I fix this mode? How do I fix this? Where do I fix this? What do I do? How do I think of this? What mindset do I give it? How do I fix this? How do I solve this? And that's the thing with grief and death. It is not fixable. It is not solvable. The only thing you can do is to change your mindset around it and to realize that that person that you shared love with, those loved ones that were with you, they still love you. You still love them. They're still with you in spirit, and you can live your life knowing that those people are watching over you. Those people are in a better place. And, we can witness all of that. All of that grief, all of that love, all of that pain. We can just be observers instead of feeling like we have to solve the puzzle of death. No one solves the puzzle of death. No one figures out the finite purpose. No one figures out the meaning behind why they died. That's just not a part of what Mother Nature offers us. There is no good reason. There is no solution to the problem that brings them back. Nothing will bring them back, And so what we have to do is we have to enter into a level of radical acceptance where we accept that we are not in control of this life. Life is so much bigger than us. We are not in control. All we can do is love and be loved, to see and be seen, to hear and be heard, to be held during our grief, to be loved during our grief. I lean on my husband during grief. My husband leans on me during grief. We both lost people, a lot of people over the last 10 years. And we understand what that's like. And so leaning on each other in that moment, having people that you trust, that that can be with you, can sit with you. You're never alone. You're never alone. There are people in the universe that love you. There are people that want to help, and I'm not even just talking about necessarily humans, animals, birds, the sky, love, the clouds, even, beings that we are not fully aware of that walk with us on this earth. There's comfort in so many places. And so I believe in a higher power. I believe in my ancestors. I believe in my calling and my purpose. And so all I have to do is trust that the universe will bring me through the fire, that the universe will bring me through the pain, and that as I love and accept and let go, more love will enter my life. And just because I lost someone does not mean that that love wasn't completely real. Does not mean that that love will not be a piece of me for the rest of my life. So, I hope that this video helped somebody out there who might be going through losing a loved one. My heart is with you, and I love you so much. and you're not alone, and you don't have to be alone. If you ever feel like you need help and you're not in a good place and you need a hotline, there's hotlines that you can call and just talk to somebody, and just, don't let yourself go to the sunken place. Don't let yourself go to a dark place. Get help, talk to someone, call a loved one, call a friend, call somebody, let your grief be known, because this is what we're supposed to do as a community, is we help each other get along. We're there for each other. You're never, never alone. All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this video. And through all my pain and through all my grief, I still see so much love, and I hope you do too.